Rwandan President Paul Kagame faces weak opposition in Friday's elections. West Africa's open spaces and borders are making it a target for terrorists. We'll tell you what's being done about it. And 1,000 young sub-Saharan leaders are in Washington this week. We'll reveal what's on their agenda. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. You are in for Vincent Makori, who will join us shortly from Kenya. This is Africa 54. Rwandan voters head to the polls Friday with President Paul Kagame widely expected to win a third term. 9 of the 11 registered political parties have endorsed the incumbent, but several candidates are still in the race. Zach Badoff reports from Kigali.
More than 200,000 people attended a final pre-election rally for President Paul Kagame. Local observers expect he will win a third term in power Friday by a wide margin. In 2010, he won 93% of the vote.
He's a freedom fighter. He has brought us peace, unity, and reconciliation.
Green Party candidate Dr. Frank Habineza held a much more low-key rally earlier this week, attracting about 500 people. The low turnout was blamed on a government order forcing a change in location. Habineza, who founded the Green Party as an alternative to Kagame's rule, is hesitant to directly criticize the president.
Is that we look at government policies, where there's something which is not going right, we criticize it, but also we give an alternative to that program, to that policy, but not individuals, because individuals come and go, but the government stays and the people stay.
Yet, Kagame has been in power for 17 years, and a 2015 constitutional referendum, approved by 98% of voters, potentially allows him to remain in power until 2034. Nearly half the crowd at Habineza's rally stood across the street. Away from the camera and prying ears, some people told VOA they were afraid of what could happen to them if they publicly supported the opposition. Charles Ndamage said he is treated like an enemy of the country.
Even here, as we were standing here, maybe there are people that we can say spy. Everywhere they are, everywhere.
Inside this gated house with curtains drawn and doors shut, Diane Rigara meets secretly with about 15 members of the People's Salvation Movement. She says she submitted more than double the required signatures to become a presidential candidate, but the National Election Commission rejected her candidacy. Rigara said it is risky for anyone who speaks out against the government.
It's terror of fear of the ruling party, fear of the state, where people get mistreated by our government, by the people in power.
Kagame and his government claim the environment is free and open.
In this country, we have more than 32 radios. We have more than 10 television stations, most of them private. We have a lot of associations, be it political associations, parties, be it simply civil society. Everything is open here.
Gasama Guerra says Kagame opponents use arguments about human rights as an excuse for their lack of support among the Rwandan population. Local human rights advocates say the freedom of expression laws on paper are strong, but implementation needs to be improved. Zach Badorf for VOA News, Kigali.
Now, with Kenya's general election only 5 days away, the country's Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is under great pressure to deliver a free, fair and credible election. The simulation of the electronic transmission of the election results went on smoothly, and the electoral body says election officials nationwide are being sworn in preparation for Tuesday's vote. Over the past years, IEBC has fought the perception that it does work in lockstep with the government of the day or may cave to the pressure to tilt the results in its favor. Speaking to Africa 54's Vincent Makori, Rosie Nakombe, one of the 7 commissioners of the IEBC, rejected that perception.
If you look at everything that this commission has done, at least for the last 6 months, there is nothing that we have done as a commission under duress from anybody. And I mean, whether you look at how we have procured the various material that we have done, or whether it's any of the decisions that we have taken, they are decisions that we have taken as a commission without any duress from anybody, whether they are political parties or whether it's government. You know, it is a perception that is here, and we've been working very hard as a commission to take away that perception, because the reality is that all of us wake up in the morning with only one goal of ensuring that we have a free and fair and credible election that we deliver to the Kenyan people. And we do not take instructions from anybody. I mean, as the Commission has come out on several occasions when we have perceived that somebody is speaking on our behalf, and we tell them we have 7 commissioners here who can very well speak on their own, and we've asked nobody to speak on our behalf. So I think those are more perceptions rather than the practicality, actually, of how decisions are made by the independent commission here.
The main presidential candidates in Kenya's election are winding down their last-minute vote hunt. As the countdown begins, their rhetoric has gotten louder and the messages even more confusing. Joining us now live via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya, with the latest is Africa 54's Vincent Makori. Good evening, Vincent.
Good evening, Esther.
And what more, Vincent, can you tell us about the last-minute campaign rounds?
Well, we can say it has reached a fever pitch at this point. The main presidential candidates have been crisscrossing the country. In fact, sometimes crisscrossing each other as they try to get the last-minute messages and, try to hunt for the votes in certain areas where they feel that perhaps they haven't really secured that vote. And we have seen presidential candidates actually visiting the same places where the day before their opponent visited. And it tells you how desperate each side is, because both sides are seen to be very close to each other in terms of the polling numbers that have come out. They indicate that President Kenyatta and the opposition candidate Raila Odinga are actually neck to neck, that if the election happened today, it could actually go either way if you look at it from another angle.
But Vincent, it's neck to neck, as you say, but what issues have really stood out so far?
The thing is, there hasn't been a major platform from both sides. I mean, there's nobody who has gone out there and had a very clear program on what they're going to do about anything. But there are some general things. For example, the president has done a lot to try and take credit for all the development projects that have been implemented so far during his tenure. He has mentioned certain things which you are not able to really qualify. For example, an increase in health clinics across the country, perhaps provision of certain services, including title deeds to many Kenyans. On the other side, of course, the opposition is saying whatever has been achieved around this time is really minimal if you compare to what the Kenyans have been expecting since the last 4 or 5 years. But nobody really has a very clear plan or clear platform.
Vincent, very quickly, how not much is being said about the other campaigns, especially the independent presidential candidates or even the Senate races, the MPs or even the county reps. What do you make of that?
You see, the major media houses here are not really paying attention to the independent candidates. In fact, you don't see any reporting on them. You don't even know where they are at this moment. And as for the senatorial, gubernatorial, and even the legislative elections, it looks like they have also been relegated to the background. Of course, campaigns are going on in the different constituencies, but they're not being given as much focus as that of the presidential race. And so that is, I think, to Kenyan, the most important at this point is the presidential race.
Oh, Vincent, thank you very much. We'll catch up tomorrow. That's Africa 54's Vincent Makori reporting live via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya. Now, West Africa's open spaces and borders are making it a target for terrorists, drug smugglers and human traffickers. But now 5 nations in that region known as the Sahel have set up a multinational military task force to better address these problems. A group of analysts discussed this new force and its prospects for success with VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young.
West Africa's Sahel region has been exploited by a wide range of terrorists, drug cartels, and human traffickers, criminals who take advantage of circumstance to ply their destructive trades. But West Africa is fighting back. In early July, 5 Sahel countries, Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad, launched a 5,000-member joint military force it calls the G5 Sahel. While this force is tasked with addressing a wide range of problems, the prime motivation for its creation was the deteriorating security situation in Mali. More on that via Skype from Addis Ababa, from Institute for Strategic Studies Africa analyst Omar Mahmoud.
The region suffers from, at its core, a large extremist threat in northern Mali, and that has spilled out to other parts of the region in the past few years, and we've seen that with attacks in Ouagadougou and Burkina Faso, with violence in as far as Cote d'Ivoire, and so it's a big concern. It's beyond just a concern for northern Mali at this point.
The G5 Sahel Force was approved by the United Nations Security Council in June with Resolution 2359 to help MINUSMA, the UN mission in Mali, to, quote, carry out its mandate as well as an environment for implementing the agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali. The European Union responded with a funding pledge of 50 million euros, but the budget for this force is slightly over 400 million euros. The effect of that funding gap is discussed via Skype from Vancouver by Nigeria-based Initiative for Public Policy Analysis scholar Thompson Ayodele.
Maintaining troops is usually a long-time commitment, and in absence of funding, these countries will not achieve their goals with which these regional forces come together, because they might be hampered by lack of funding.
France, which traditionally has had a presence in the Sahel and presently has some 4,000 troops there, has, like the EU, expressed support for this multinational force. But again, it's a matter of money for the relatively poor G5 countries. And for now, substantial outside funding, such as from the UN, does not appear likely. Via Skype from Dakar, European Council on Foreign Relations analyst Andrew Leibovich.
The French government was hoping for either more cooperation, certainly approval and potentially funding, eventually under a UN peacekeeping budget or under a similar UN budgetary mechanism that just is not going to happen right now.
The U.S. Africa Command, known as AFRICOM, has a presence in the Sahel, providing training for regional troops and other assistance. But this has not included substantial funding for G5 Sahel. While the problems of the Sahel are relatively distant for the United States, they are much more immediate for Europe. Because of that, Europe's support for the G5 makes good sense. According via Skype from Chicago by the Center for Strategic and International Studies Africa Program's Richard Downey.
Really, you have to ask what the other EU country members are doing to provide support as well, because dealing with the problem, the security problem at source in the Sahel is, in the long run, going to be a cheaper alternative than grappling with it when it comes closer to home.
Downey is joined by other analysts in stressing that along with this new security force, the Sahel countries must address weak governance and development in order to bring lasting stability to the region. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, UNICEF recommends that mothers breastfeed within the first hour after giving birth. More details after the break.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest recommendations on breastfeeding. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. The World Health Organization and the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, recommend that mothers breastfeed within the first hour after giving birth. And they should continue until their children reach age 2 with supplemental food as they grow older. However, according to a report released by the agencies, no country in the world meets these standards or provides enough support for breastfeeding mothers. The Global Breastfeeding Initiative says, among other things, breastfeeding can bolster brain development and saves mothers' and babies' lives. In the first 6 months of life, it helps prevent diarrhea and pneumonia, 2 major causes of infant death, and breastfeeding also reduces the risk of ovarian and breast cancer, 2 leading causes of death among women. Now, irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is characterized by uncomfortable gastrointestinal symptoms, sometimes such as intermittent bowel pain, altered bowel habits, gas, and bloating. These symptoms range from mild to severe, and they can go and come. The issues, which affects up to 20% of Americans, may seem minor, but experts say for those struggling with IBS, it has the power to keep them home from social events or even miss days of work. The gastrointestinal issue can affect anyone at any age. IBS is thought to be caused by abnormal contractions of the colon. Experts say among many reasons, certain foods are the cause and trigger of irritable bowel syndrome in people. People who suffer from IBS often have to adjust their diet to find relief. The FODMAP diet, which is gaining popularity in the United States, has been scientifically proven to provide relief for people suffering with chronic abdominal symptoms or irritable bowel syndrome. Joining us in the studio for more is Dr. Onikepe Adegbola, founder of Casa de Sante. Dr. Adegbola, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Tell us about IBS and how much it's affecting people and what got you involved into this issue.
So IBS is the second most common cause of absenteeism in the Western world. And 10 to 20% of the population in the United States are actually afflicted with IBS, but only a small fraction is undiagnosed. And it's a cause of great inconvenience for people in their daily lives.
Do people realize that it's an issue specifically, or they think, oh, I'm just having a bad digestion or my stomach hurts and that's it?
So yes, there's a full spectrum of symptoms in people with IBS. So there are people that have occasional bad indigestion and issues, and there are people for which it's really debilitating, and they go through a lot of tests and have to go to the doctor just trying to find out the cause of the syndrome. So it does range the gamut.
Now, your approach is the fact that what we eat is really critical in terms of addressing IBS. Tell us about that, and this whole approach of FODMAP. What is that? What is it?
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful, right? Yes. Yeah. So it's been shown that a number of short-chain carbohydrates, which are the FODMAPs, do in some people they're not digested. So normally when you eat something, it gets broken down, absorbed into the body. But in people with IBS, a vast majority of them, it's not digested, and instead the bacteria in the tummy, in the intestines, just go to work on them, and they break them down, and you end up with gas in the stomach and bloating and diarrhea and all the symptoms that come with IBS. So for those people, it's been shown that up to 70% of patients with IBS are actually helped by this restricting FODMAPs in the diet.
And what are some of the things to avoid? What is this? What does it consist of?
So interestingly, a major thing that you want to avoid is onion and garlic, which is really difficult, as you can imagine, because
I have to say
so many foods have onion and garlic, and then dairies, milk, a lot of milk products, a number of vegetables, some of the usual suspects like beans, for example. And so things like that. There's a whole list of products that you want to avoid or take in little amounts. Yeah.
Now, through Casa de Sante, you advocate a certain type of food and ingredients and also spices. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we provide products for people on this diet, and our products have been scientifically tested to be shown to have the acceptable levels of FODMAPs in our foods. So, for example, our foods do not contain any onion or garlic, which is great for the people on the diet. All the other products are compatible with the diet because it's been lab tested. So we have our spices, we have our salsas, we have a number of products for people on this diet just to make them comfortable and find something to eat.
So how fast do you find relief after you try these products?
So so the diet is something that you do in 3 phases. The first phase, which is the restrictive phase, when you restrict all these FODMAPs, is about 2 to 6 weeks. Okay. And a lot of people find relief within the first 2 weeks. And then after that, then they can reintroduce the FODMAPs in little bits just to see what they can tolerate, because oftentimes they're not reacting to all the FODMAPs, just some of them. And then what you can tolerate, you will incorporate in your diet going forward.
Is there a special test to know which one you are sensitive to?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, so there are some tests that people do. They're like a breath test, okay. And there have been some blood tests that people have tried. But really, probably because people are so different and these tests are not exact, it's just to restrict it, bring it back in a little bit and see how you feel.
So finally, very quickly, what is your advice for people who suffer from IBS?
So my advice is, see your doctor, see your dietitian, try the FODMAP diet. We can get our foods at casadosante.com. That's where we sell our foods online. And we have a lot of resources for people with IBS on the FODMAP diet. We have meal plans, and we have an app which has a food diary which they can use to track their eating and see what works for them.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
And that was Dr. Onipe Adegboda. She is the founder of Casa de Sante. And that's our health report for today. So stay in touch. For more, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, young African leaders come to the nation's capital. We'll be right back.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. As demand for computer programmers is expected to grow, a Saudi after-school club is aiming to train the next generation of coders. Children as young as 7-year-old can learn the fundamentals of coding at the K Coders Club in the capital, Riyadh. The idea that the school started when a Saudi married couple wanted their daughters to learn how to code, believing that computer skills were essential for their children's careers. The program is split into 3 levels, from the basics of coding to learning essential business skills and how to commercialize and sell mobile apps and computer programs. And that's what's trending today. And 1,000 of sub-Saharan Africa's most promising young leaders are in Washington this week for the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit to meet with U.S. government, private sector and civil society representatives. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
Africa's best and brightest youth are meeting in Washington this week at the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit. This is the flagship program of the Young African Leaders Initiative, known as YALI, that empowers young people. The summit follows 6 weeks of academic study at 38 higher education institutions across the U.S. The opening plenary session featured fellowship alumni who provide a wealth of information. The 2017 fellows talked about what they learned and what they hope to achieve. Lynette Kundarbayo Osuman is a teacher from Ghana. and is pursuing the public management program.
The yearly program has really been an amazing one. Aside from learning from the Americans, you have all these amazing African leaders to learn from. And there was one thing that that is worthy of taking back home, and that is the fact that Americans are so passionate, and then it's a giving community. This I am really taking home, because people have the spirit of volunteerism out here, and it's one positive thing that I have to let my people have. I have an organization known as Teen Talk Ghana, and basically what we do is empower teenagers, and then whilst engaging them with opinion leaders, we create safe spaces for them to talk about issues that border on their welfare. And so I am transferring every knowledge that I have here back home to work with these teenagers.
Joseph Labella Sese, an agricultural economist from Liberia, is also studying public management.
I have a vision to see my country food secure, especially in terms of our stable food crop production, that is rice. This program has helped me in many ways. I have learned how Americans are really helping their community in terms of providing food for their community. One good example would be the food bank, which I'm taking right back home. I want to go back home to get engaged with smallholder rice farmers, provide input for them to increase their productivity, and then the surpluses will be kept as a green reserve, and that green reserve will eventually lead to our development of our food bank, where we will provide food for the vulnerable community, people that are in need of food.
Mahame Fandagumo Dijete is a journalist from Mali in the desert city of Timbuktu. He is in the civic leadership track.
So my future aspiration is go back in my nomad communities to be a leader of my community, like a servant leader at the service of my rural grassroots communities. My goal is to fight against bad governance, to fight to promote transparency, to promote peace and counter violent extremism. As I am a cultural heritage researcher, I'm writing about cultural heritage as a catalyst for lasting peace on the edge of the Sahara Desert and countering violent extremism narratives online.
Obubi Aimtasa is from Togo. He is building his technical experience to promote good governance and economic transparency.
With the experience that I acquire from the academic session that we go through is to see how the community participation can bring change in government side. So I'm more passionate about how my community can play watchdog toward the government to support the government in their action toward transparency, to fight corruption, and bring the youth to the volunteerism and the community service.
The fellows were recruited from all 49 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and include an equal representation of men and women. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
And that's our show for today. A very good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An alley is a narrow path between or behind buildings.
Up one's alley.
Does this expression have to do with city streets?
Jonathan, do you have any friends who teach singing?
Hello. I am a singer.
You are? Oh, awesome. Do you